If you're like me and you're interested in survival games, then you probably loved the original The Forest game, and you've probably been eagerly waiting on the hype train for The Forest 2, the highly anticipated sequel. Well, it's with good news that yesterday, as of writing this video, The Sons of the Forest, which is its sequel, dropped. But the big question on everyone's minds is it good? So I've decided to make a review which is based on the first 1 hour of gameplay from exploring caves and caverns, searching for clues, and interacting with both the world and its AI. Let's take a deep dive into The Sons of the Forest and find out if it lives up to the hype and if it's actually a good sequel. First, let's cover the story. So the beginning of The Sons of the Forest story is pretty gripping. They seem to have laid the groundwork for it pretty well. It's certainly immersive. It follows a similar outline to how the original game did with the jet plane crash, yet this time you're in a helicopter, visiting an island in search for a group of high-profile missing people, when you're suddenly hit and crash land, once again making you assume the role of a survivor who's stranded in remote wilderness on an island. It has the same air of mystery that the original game gave, with the premise that there's a bigger mystery that needs to be solved, with small clues that you'll find along the way through looting items and trinkets and playing Detective Explorer again. The beginning of the game definitely sets the groundwork for something more interesting. As for the graphics and sound design, the graphics of The Forest are beautiful. Not only does it look like the original game, but there's certainly a clear upgrade upon those beloved original visuals. All of the environments in this game are well crafted, and there's a clear attention to detail, with the trees and segments of the forest looking very detailed, which is something that's consistent with the foliage, the small crops, and the shrubbery and general flora, as well as the running water like the rivers, and also in the ocean itself. The visuals are simply stunning, and they feature some really beautiful landscapes, from open clearings within the forest itself and vast beaches near the ocean. Of course, with such detail, it's complemented by well strategized and in place sound design, which keeps you immersed with its atmospheric effects, as well as its ambience and music, which adds a layer of sense of tension and dread, especially when in conjunction with the moans and screams of the creatures at nighttime. The gameplay though of this game is incredible, and it definitely had me hooked during what I've played so far, which is a tough ask for players like me because I don't really play that many different games anymore, and I also find it quite hard to get immersed in any games for a long period of time. When I'm not recording, I'm not really tending to actually play games that much. The Sons of the Forest delivers on gameplay, with tight and intuitive mechanics and smooth and fluid movement. The beginning is reminiscent of the first game as you bust open some boxes and loot the area around the crashed chopper before dispersing. Of course, the crafting system in game is also mostly similar too, interacting with each individual item and combining them to craft them together with a gear icon just like you did in the original. However, there's a neat little feature which displays possible crafting combinations or their recipes based on the items which you either have or that you need to complete that recipe, which is a nice upgrade to the original and also prevents you having to stalk the wiki pages. There's also a greater size inventory as well as number of equipable items. You'll need to pan your camera to see the further edges of your survival backpack to see some of the items that you're carrying that perhaps you've overlooked. One of the more interesting of the new items though is definitely the GPS. This is theoretically a smartphone which you can use. Of course, with the neat dual wielding or dual equipable feature, you can carry this around whilst holding a weapon or tool at the same time to navigate around more easily. This gadget shows you flashing blips on the map, which are kind of clues to discover, as well as entrances to caverns and camps. This is basically the item that you'll be glued to, and you can utilize it to find where to go and what's interesting nearby. You'll find certain clues with the GPS, and you'll also run into some of them out of chance. For an example, on the beach, I heard a radio blasting out some tunes, and I found a dead survivor from the helicopter with tons of loot laid around him to steal. And then I swum further to find a life dinghy with a second survivor who was dead on it too. When I climbed on it and looted this spot, I saw a gigantic shark fin splash up in the water, and then it circled around me like Jaws. This was pretty edgy, but luckily I did manage to swim and lose it. There are a lot of different survivor camps with tents and loots around, with nobody in them. Perhaps some of these have mysteries. Unfortunately, I accidentally stabbed a gasoline bottle. Not the best idea. The survival metrics in the game are quite similar to the original game, but they're a little different. For an example, the player has health and stamina, thirst and hunger that must be monitored, as well as strength and fatigue, so when you become tired, it actually means something and you should sleep. Perhaps this will also play a part with the mental state of the player, which is something being present in the first game, but I haven't experienced this part yet. The nighttime is extremely scary in this game though. When night falls, it's best to have a place to stay, unlike me. At one point I heard some mutants and then saw them scatter and spread around me through the shrubs just a few meters away. There seems to be some kind of stealth element though to the game, because as I managed to crouch behind some bushes and then basically sneak away until I found a nearby river that I could just swim away down. As for exploring does feel exactly like we're used to, and of course those dreaded cave mouths leading down into caverns and labyrinths are still a big thing, for better or for worse. I did manage to explore 2 or 3 of them though in the first hour or so of gameplay for this video's footage. The ones I encountered were scientific type labs which were contained inside. The first led into a passageway which led me into a storage type room. In here there was a whole bunch of loot and also a bed which was a nice save point. But the coolest little Easter egg was a 3D printer which let me refill it with resin and use the nearby computer to print out a series of different models. These included things like a mask, a sled which possibly is for going down hills, arrowheads and grappling hooks, a flask which was super useful later to gather and hold water, and some other useful trinkets. This was a nice little find, and down this corridor was an eerie hallway which led into another which was hidden behind some white screen. There was some random assorted loot like watches and money here. It seems that most of these scientific rooms require some kind of item, in this case mostly keycards, to actually access the further segments of the facility, which lends clues to the story progression, which was just like what the original Forest had too. The second one though of these caverns was a 20-second or so crawl down into a deep dark cave with a winding ramp down which led me to a trap door which could be opened. In here was a food storage facility, which doesn't really sound very menacing until you go inside. Now of course it was great for loot, but with all the hanging bodies and the whole dark theme in this place, it was pretty creepy. Luckily I didn't have the keycard for that spot either. Then there's also the NPCs in the game, so we're first going to talk about the cannibals and mutants. Everyone's favourite forest pals are back too. I'm talking the cannibals here, and some of them of course are a little more normal because you do have the tribal kind, and then you also have that spooky horror movie mutant type which crawl on all 4 limbs around too. The mutants on all 4s are strong, but they take more of a shy and timid combat approach, where they'll come in to strike and then they'll run back away into the woods. They're much easier to fend off with a spear and some careful footwork, so they're not really a problem, especially the fact that you'll probably not notice them in big groups. But the tribal cannibals are super strong. I tried fighting them off with a wooden spear, but got absolutely socked by them. You'll realise that they have bone clubs and they pack a serious punch. When you lose the first time though, you'll find yourself in a familiar position, compromised and all tied up in a camp. Now if you're lucky enough, they'll be gone when you wake up, or you can just make a quick getaway, but if you try to fight them, or if you have the misfortune like me, where they're nearby and they're still wandering around when you awaken, then you might die again, which is of course the end, and then you need to reload a game save to start again from your last checkpoint, because you basically failed the game. Now, there's also a really cool feature. This is the MPC Followers system. This is a brand new mechanic that's interesting, and it's a really nice added touch, especially for single play. Since I was playing solo the first time around, it was nice to know that there's a new NPC Followers system, with the first being an injured pilot or soldier that you can group up with at the beginning. Now, it's quite strange though, since you don't actually communicate by talking. I'm not sure if there is some kind of reason, like maybe your character is deaf, or if there's a reason for this, since I haven't actually yet got too deep into the story, as this is an early review, so maybe there is actually a proper reason for this. But you communicate with the follower via a notepad. This basically lets you scroll up and down and offer them instructions. This includes following you, gather you materials from the forest floor, like come back and give you some sticks, or even build a fire at night or a shelter for you to sleep in. It's actually a genuinely useful and intuitive system that I really like. This was an absolute lifesaver during one of the nights when I couldn't see to gather resources, and it actually saved me from dying. So let's talk about the price, because this review is going to be quite short. Now the price for this game is also quite fair in my opinion. It was £24.99 to buy, which I think is around $30 USD, which is a pretty good price for a new game, so I actually decided to get a second copy to give my best friend too, because it was so cheap. So what about the conclusion? So to sum it up, based on just the first hour of playing, The Sons of the Forest is a great sequel that has everything that I expected for a survival horror sequel and what it should have. It has a gripping opening to its storyline so far from what I've played. It has stunning graphics and impressive gameplay. It's definitely worth the hype that I had in my eyes, and I'm probably going to play it even further and try and complete it. The attention to detail in the graphics and the sound design is amazing, and the crafting system is easy to use, and it comes with an added feature of displaying possible crafting combinations. The caves and caverns are still as spooky as ever, and the cannibals and mutants are back, and the survivors are here too, with a brand new NPC Followers system to aid you when playing. If you're a fan of the original game or just looking for a new and exciting gameplay experience, then you definitely won't want to miss out on The Sons of the Forest, as it does echo the exact same vibe and gameplay feeling that the first gave. Let me know in the comments below if you played the game yet, or what you thought of The Sons of the Forest, or if you have any questions before you actually buy it if you're considering buying this game. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more survival game videos.